Welcome to the Maintenance Factory. Today we're going to talk about how to improve your plant's OEE through improving equipment reliability. So stick around. So once again, welcome back to the channel. Today we're going to talk about a really important topic, and that is how to increase your overall equipment efficiency at your plant through improving equipment reliability. And before we get into the topic, we need to talk about, or line out rather, some assumptions. The first assumption is that your lacking OEE or performance issues is not the result of operator-induced failures or processing issues, but it is the direct result of poor equipment function, operation, or maintenance-related tasks. So let's get into the topic. So how do you go about improving equipment reliability? Well, first of all, this is going to be a pretty high-level video, but it's got some very valuable points. The first point that we need to talk about is how to select your area of focus. So I'm going to put a note up here. Select area of focus. This is step number 1. Select your area of focus. So how do you go about selecting your area of focus? Ideally, you would have an existing CMMS or some type of system that tracks your corrective and preventative task or your emergency work orders. You need to have some type of system that you can go reference and data mine some information, and that will help you select your area of focus. So if you have a functioning CMMS, then that's great. If you don't have a functioning CMMS, then step number 1 is going to be your first major roadblock. If you do not have a good system to mine data, let's say you've walked into a new operation and they have a brand new CMMS and you don't have historical data to reference, well, then the next best thing is to go talk to members of leadership, members of operation, maintenance technicians, frontline leaders in your own department, and there's got to be someone there, hopefully, that's got some historical knowledge set back in their mind where you can go ask them questions about what has been chronic to us in terms of chronic adjustments, chronic failures, major breakdowns. What has happened in the past that has really made us struggle? You may get some good information out of that, and it may be worth doing that in conjunction with doing some data analysis or some data mining from your current data management system. So let's assume we do have a CMMS and we've extracted some amount of data. It may be worth looking at a process area, or it may be worth looking at specific pieces of equipment. It's really going to be dependent upon your current situation, the operation that you have, and how familiar you are with the current systems. I would recommend looking at it by, if you have the ability to look at it by processing areas first and see which process areas generate the most calls. And then within that process area or functional location, you can then look at the specific pieces of equipment that reside within that functional location and then do some analysis on the work, the corrective work, the emergency work related to that piece of equipment. So the end game here for select area focus is to get enough granular detail to tell you about chronic reoccurring failures. So you need to really analyze some work order text and historical data, look at components, parts that's been checked out to that piece of equipment, and see if you can connect the dots between some reoccurring chronic issues that take place or some major breakdown events, and see if you can get some idea as to what components failed, what parts failed, maybe what led up to the failure, and then that becomes some more interaction with some of the teammates. You may have some good information in your CMMS that tells you generally what happened. You may have to go back and reference some team members to get more details. So first of all, select your area of focus, and then after you have kind of selected your area of focus and equipment, we've somewhat talked about this already, but you have to analyze. You have to analyze your data. And after you've performed your analysis, again, we've talked about this a little bit already, It's going to give you some kind of idea of whatever the chronic reoccurring issues are, or if it's major breakdown events, and kind of what components, parts, and pieces failed within the equipment or within the area. So after you have selected your area of focus and you've analyzed your data set, the next thing you need to do is put together a plan. Now, hopefully, you have a planning process that exists within your organization already. And what I mean by that is a dedicated individual or group of individuals who do nothing more but look at work and tasks that's been identified from PMs, and they're generating corrective work and plans based off that feedback, and they're putting it into a schedule and then later getting executed. So again, select your area of focus, do some analysis of your data, and then put together a plan. So this is pretty simple so far. Let's assume that at this point you have connected some dots, and maybe you have a chronic reoccurring failure that takes place with one specific piece of equipment. And what would be your next step? Me personally, I think the next step I would take is I would look at the current preventative maintenance tasks that are within our systems, and are they detecting, or are they set up to detect, the current failure mode that I am seeing in my analysis. If they're not detecting the current failure mode that's in your analysis, then you've got your first piece of really low-hanging fruit to go pick. Obviously, you'll take this PM and then do a revision on it, and then once that's revised, there's another key piece that has to be done, and that is the formal communication or maybe training that needs to take place to the frontline leaders that are responsible for executing that work. So just because you've selected your area of focus and you analyzed it and you found a problem and you've updated a PM doesn't mean that that problem is going to go away unless that task gets properly executed. So don't forget about the execution piece of this and the follow-up and the communication after a revision is made to a task. Let's say, for example, you don't have any PMs at all. You look at this piece of equipment and it's a chronic piece of equipment that's generating all types of calls. Well, maybe you don't have a PM, or maybe the PM has been put to sleep in your system, or it's not being put on the schedule. Or maybe you do have a PM, but no one understands the importance of doing that PM task, and it never gets executed week after week or month after month, whatever the interval is. Then you need to go correct that problem. You need to make sure that you have some identified failure modes and that you have a way to detect those failure modes, and then you have a way to identify it again, get it back in the planning phase, scheduled and executed. So one thing we haven't talked much about up until this point is the scheduling. All right. To increase and improve your OEE in your factory, you're really going to have the buy-in of some operations members and upper leadership. The first and best way, in my opinion, to start the ball rolling to get their involvement is to set up a scheduling process. So if you have the ability to identify defects, you're looking at that data, prioritizing it, you're getting it in a planning queue, then you should be able to generate some type of schedule that tells the operations group, hey, this is what we've identified, it's already been planned, we're ready to execute. I need 2 hours, I need 4 hours, I need 2 days. You need to have this information from the planning process brought to a scheduler's meeting, and ideally you'll interact with operations, and now you start to get the buy-in that, hey, it's important that we release this equipment to the maintenance team so that they can make these problems go away. So get the buy-in from the operations group, and the first way to do that is, in my opinion, through the scheduling process. The next step, and probably the most important step, is execute. It doesn't matter how much time we spend trying to select our area of focus. It doesn't matter how much data we analyze, or how well we do a plan, or if we build a schedule. It doesn't matter at all unless we execute. And what I mean by execute, I don't mean just pencil whipping the paper or we gave it our best shot. We have to have really good quality work done during the work execution phase. And the work execution is probably solely going to be reliant upon the leadership members of your group. It may be relying upon the maintenance supervisor, which in my opinion, that's where this solely rests on, is the maintenance supervisor. He's responsible for good work execution. If good work execution is not taking place, the supervisor needs to be able to identify that, determine what the problem is, and then correct it. So what could you have wrong with work execution? Well, it may be that the process is broken because your technicians or your frontline employees don't pull the plan or the PM task list and they don't go follow that task list. They're doing it based off historical information, and they're not doing it per the latest revised PM task list. So there could be a problem with that. It may be as simple as, a technician that doesn't have access to a printer to print off his task list. It could be something really that simple. It's probably not, but it really could be something that simple. Other issues, it could be they don't have the proper tools, they don't have the proper training, or maybe the work execution couldn't be done properly because there was an issue with the planning phase or an issue with the scheduling phase. So your work execution should have a close eye on it because there should be feedback mechanisms that go back into identified work. There should be feedback back to the planning process about, hey, this took more time, this needs more hours, or it needs more labor put on it, or I don't have the right part numbers, this is the wrong part number. So there's constant feedback mechanisms to the planning phase, and there's also feedback mechanisms to the scheduling phase where, why didn't I do a good execution of this work? Well, it was because I only had 4 hours to do it, and operations only gave me 2. It could be many, many different reasons, but by far, if you want to increase your equipment reliability, I would say this: start with an area of focus. Figure out what you need to focus on. Analyze that data that you have, put a plan together, get that plan on a schedule, and then execute good quality work. Now, this all sounds really simple, and more than likely, this is not going to be simple in real life. And this is just one scenario out of many that could exist in issues that are, existent within a factory now, and how to go about increasing equipment reliability. Now, if I've missed something, or you have another question or something specific to your location, leave me a comment down below and tell me about what your specific problem is, and maybe I can give you some pointers. Maybe we'll generate another video on how to go after other reliability issues and improve OEE. If you got some value out of the video, click the like button, subscribe to the channel, click that notification bell, and then that way you'll be alerted to the next content that we put out here. So anyway, thanks for watching, and I'll see you again next time.